So, you remember what they said for several months, that the war in Europe, in Ukraine, could lead to nuclear Armageddon? Even Biden, in a closed-door fundraiser at the Murdoch, says, yes, nuclear Armageddon is possible. That's a little bit hyperbolic, okay? But the Russians have been doing some very, very strange, disturbing things. Their assault on a nuclear power plant in Ukraine, well, doesn't seem like the smartest theater or strategic move. The reality of the war right now is it seems to be forgotten in most parts of the world as it moves into the winter phase, which is, of course, very, very hard for the invader. What does it all mean? What do the Ukrainians require from us? Hopefully not pallets of cash. Let's ask a man who has served this nation honorably in and out of uniform, most recently as the Secretary for Veterans Affairs in the Trump cabinet, Secretary Robert Wilkie. Welcome back to the Gorka Reality Check.
Good to be back.
So, is it fair to say that we seem to be forgetting about this war? And as conservatives, how do we relate to what this administration is doing? I've said from the beginning, this nation that does have corruption issues doesn't need lots of cash. It needs ammunition, it needs Soviet-era weapons, and it needs intelligence to make the Russians bleed. What's changed lately? And in your estimation, because I know you follow these things very closely, can we tell who's winning, Secretary Wilkie?
Well, first of all, the Hungarians and the Poles and the Baltic states have not forgotten. Just give you an example, Doctor. We're looking at this winter 6.5 million Ukrainians pouring over the borders into Hungary and Poland. And those nations who are frontline nations need our help. I do believe that the Russians are continuing to lose. The loss of Kherson was a humiliation for Putin. And I want to expand that a little bit. The axis of evil, and I'm not even throwing North Korea in that one, but the three legs of that stool, it's not been a very good few months for the Chinese, the Iranians, and now the Russians. And I actually think that the use of winter as a weapon, although it looks fine on paper, has the propensity, the probability of bouncing back on the Russians because their troops aren't equipped, particularly these conscripts that they're throwing pell-mell into the fight. They don't even have jackets. It sounds like something that you would have experienced with the German Sixth Army outside of Stalingrad in the middle of March, where they had no winter overcoats. Putin is doing the very same thing.
There's footage I've seen. There's footage I've seen, Secretary, of Russian prisoners, and they look at their body armor, and the plate carriers have cardboard in them. They don't have even steel plates or ceramic plates. That's the level. This is the kind of cannon fodder attitude of the Russians. So time will tell what happens in the European theater. Let's switch azimuth and let's look at Asia. We have events the likes of which we've never seen on the streets of modern China. We have students risking it all. And then we have this White House's response. Instead of saying, yes, we stand by anybody who wants to have liberty, just like we did in 1776. This is what a former admiral in the White House said about Biden's response to the historic events in China. Play cut.
I'm wondering, what is the president's reaction when he hears protesters in China chant freedom or Xi Jinping step down?
The president's not going to speak for protesters around the world. They're speaking for themselves.
And so there's no reaction?
These protesters are speaking for themselves. What we are doing is making it clear that we support the right of peaceful protest.
Well, that's plain un-American.
Your reaction, Secretary Wilkie?
Plain un-American. Let's go back to 1981, where we had three titanic leaders, St. John Paul, Margaret Thatcher, and Ronald Reagan. When the steel workers in Gdansk took to the street, those leaders didn't sit on their hands. They supported solidarity, and they began the slow but eventually successful destruction of the Soviet Empire. To say that America no longer stands for that is a rejection of everything that we have been since 1776.
Perfectly put. That's why you were a member of the Trump cabinet. He is our senior national security strategist at Newsmax. You can also follow him at the America First Policy Institute. Thank you for your continued service to this nation. The prisoners, the citizen prisoners of China are standing up. What about political persecution here in America? It's real, and we're going to talk to some of the victims. Stay with us here on the Gorka Reality Check.